Bop, bop, bobbing, bop, bop, bobbing, bobbing, bobbing along. Bop, bop, bobbing, bop, bop, bobbing, bobbing along, bobbing along. It was interesting for me watching that little clip of Dr. Phil.
That video you sent me about with the View and Dr. Phil. Oh my gosh, I totally, I was like, man, these are people on main stages, almost a planetary stage. You know, there are a lot of people all over the world listen to these people, especially in our country.
Yeah.
I just such irresponsibility dealing with words and meaning and messages. They're all just hyped up on emotions and literally like spitting while they talk because they can't control themselves. They're so fucking fired up, and they, especially Whoopi, she's real renowned for that. Joy used to be pretty bad at that.
Right.
And then I even saw that Dr. Phil did the same thing. He's doing that in his book. He's real worked up and pissed off. And I've got this main theme that I've been working on is this huge pointing the finger at social media as the problem in our society. And I think it's bullshit. I think that they're scared of social media because it's actually the one thing that we're utilizing to get to deal with the mismanagement of mainstream media. And it's this tool that we're going to be able to use to mitigate the damages of mainstream media. We get to talk to each other.
Yes.
We don't just sit behind the TV and everybody's listening to the same bullshit. No, I can go talk to anybody in the world on my platform or this platform or that platform, see what they think.
Absolutely. Yeah? Yes.
I think it's important. And the one thing you said about children and the correlation between the 2008 and 9 the cell phone coming out and social media wasn't for children when it came out, and they weren't on social media yet, and it was a very young thing. It was not mainstream, and all this, like, that's the reason why all the children were committing suicide. I was like, holy shit, this is bullshit, because we had a huge housing bubble almost worldwide with real estate prices, and it caused a huge economic downfall. And there was all the adults were shitting their pants, losing everything, and adults were in huge depression, and that transferred to the children. The children were also dealing with that. They weren't the ones losing the money, but they were dealing with their parents that were going through these crises. But really, it kind of bums me out when people are blaming social media for all these things in society, which, I mean, yeah, granted, there's a lot of problems with social media. It's giving a lot of power to people that don't really have the know-how, or not very responsible with this power. So,
yeah, I had an interesting talk with Otto the other day. We were talking about an article that was written by a woman called Freya India. She wrote an article called Stop Opening Up About Your Mental Health Online. And she starts her article by saying that on TikTok there were 127 billion views on the hashtag mental health. And she was saying, when you open up about your mental health and you tell everybody that's part of your brand, becomes part of your brand. And now it's there for all time. It's recorded that you said this thing about yourself. And now whoever wants to, ever in their life, can go and they can find your thing about what you said, you know? And it's always there. It's always... And, I mean, it was really interesting what she was saying. But the thing that Otto and I were saying it was, why are these kids online without their parents? You know? Why are there 127 billion 13-year-olds? Okay, they're obviously not all 13-year-olds, but it's TikTok. Why are there all these young people who don't have a mom and dad to speak to about their issues, you know, who can't turn to somebody in real life, and who are just randomly searching through social media for answers? because I think that the internet is a magnificent place for answers. I'm not sure that those answers are always necessarily available on social media. Sometimes you need to look in a different place than social media to get those sort of nuanced answers.
Right. Well, I mean, you got to break down statistic a little bit, and that, TikTok is not just kids anymore; it's everybody. And 127 billion. I mean, there are videos that are 5 seconds long, and someone plays it 40 times because they left their phone. They went to the kitchen or something.
True.
So, yeah, the numbers are just. But you're very correct on, like, are we being responsible? And when we find something like a social media like TikTok or Minds or Facebook, do we go and look up some factual information on maybe, Google, or maybe we go and ask our therapist, or maybe we go pick up an encyclopedia or something? Are we fact checking these things and really delving into when we make a decision and when we see something and we're like, is that so? Are we validating that? Are we just now piling on more beliefs that may or may not be true? We don't know. So very valid.
Yes.
Yeah, very valid.
Well, I think that's a much better attitude towards social media than the attitude of social media is bad. I mean, social media is social media, and it does the job of social media. It doesn't do the job of the therapist or the confidant or the authority. And I think that's the same thing that the older generation hasn't really, or I say the older generation, maybe the mainstream segment of the population hasn't really understood that there's a whole group of people who aren't mainstream who use the internet in a very different way than just going onto social media and posting a picture of their breakfast and catching the latest reel for 30 seconds. So it's a sort of an ignorance, I think, on the part of the mainstream, that they don't realize how people are using the resource or the resources on the internet to do what you say, validate these opinions that are just flying around everywhere in modern society.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And of course, and we're all willing to admit that there's bot farms and these devices all on autopilot consuming data. So how can we use numbers to validate anything? We need to just knock on someone's door, ask them. Stop making all these accusations, blanket statements about the world because a video got 1 million views or something. It's ridiculous.
And definitely a job for dub waves.
Right? Yeah, consuming that world with some responsibility. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big task. We're coming from such a place where we didn't have that very recently, and all of a sudden, all this access.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can't wrap their heads around it, or they can't give themselves time out enough to make sense of it and to allow the bruise to subside so that you're not reacting
exactly
in such a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that with all the propaganda, it's like the end of the world is tomorrow, and I mean the next day or the next day. So everybody's in this we must find the answer to solve all of our problems right now, or we're so screwed.
Yeah.
And all the clickbait with making headlines that make people click on it. It's like, oh, this is the end of us all. It's like very irresponsible. And these are huge channels. People are making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that are exercising these very irresponsible ways of, and that there is something you can say about social media. But you can't just be like social media is the cause of all problems. You know, it's just
Absolutely.
like, yeah, there's some mismanagement, sure, and we should address it, and we should have conflict, but ultimately, conflict doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It means that we're actually going to keep it from happening. If we didn't have conflict, we would let the ship sink. But we're trying to not. We're trying to bail it out.
When you talk about mismanagement, you remind me of Dr. Phil's points about the mismanagement of locking the children down during the lockdowns, locking them down in the same house with their abusers. They had nowhere to get to social welfare. Apparently, I think what he said on that clip was that the reporting of incidents of abuse dropped by about 50 to 60% during the lockdowns because the young children weren't able to find any space to get away from their abusers, these people, either their parents or their carers, or I don't know. Sort of, he didn't go
Yeah.
into details about who it was. These school children who went to school to get away from their hideous situations. And I don't know what percentage it is. I mean, it might only be 1% of school children.
But see, that's going right back to my point. Is it's not the lockdown's fault.
No, it's not the lockdown's fault, but it is a consequence of the lockdown.
Is it?
Well,
Or is the actual consequence the abuse?
well, the abuser had access to their victim during the lockdowns in a way that they didn't have in normal life, because in normal life you have people coming round and knocking on your door, and you always have to, you're never safe from the outside world. But during lockdown, there were these strange situations that were created where nobody had to be accountable to anybody else. You were just inside your home, and people assumed that you were doing things right. But as we know, there are people who are very evil, I suppose is the word that I use. Don't know if other people seem to dislike that word, but I do feel that some things that happen are beyond badness.
Yeah, I would agree, especially if you know you're doing something wrong, but you're still doing it. I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, I definitely don't agree with the lockdowns and that what happened and what the governments around the world did to try and mitigate this assumption that they had that they were being told the disease was going to kill everybody, and especially the children. And then you take it another step further, and we're talking about vaccines and all of that. It was just a shit show, just an absolute tsunami of bullshit. But there we are back at conflict, and the fact that all of this happened has driven us all to a new place of consciousness.
Yes.
And we will never go back to the small things that led up to that. So possibly we might be headed in a more positive. I mean, we have potential and to head in a better direction.
Yes.
That's going to happen, I don't know, but and certainly all the casualties of this. I mean, that didn't need to happen, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And if we don't take that as an example that we need to better ourselves and better our systems of control, our government agencies, the people that are pulling, all of these things that are. I was saying, we've got the huge system of that we're utilizing. What is it called? Our social services, because we don't know how to possibly handle that the speed at which things are evolving in this world. So we're utilizing these socialist programs, socialized programs, to help. These crutches, we don't need them. I think that if we just manned up and we did things ourselves, then every time we can't do something, if we go and use the crutch, we're not exercising our ability and our strength, and we're going to lose control. We're going to further progress into delinquency and atrophy. We'll never catch back up. So the point is like, if it's too hard, do it anyways. Fail 100 times. Just keep doing it. If you did something and you failed, I will congratulate you. But if you didn't do anything and you made someone else do it and they failed for you, that's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't congratulate you. But go ahead, try. And if you fail, I'm going to, that's so cool that you tried, because I bet you probably had a feeling that you might fail, but you tried anyways. And here you are back again. You're going to try again. So that's awesome.
Yes.
I don't mind failure, but I do mind not having the wherewithal or the courage to try and put it in someone else, and then they fail for you, and then you blame them.
Yes. I hear you. I think I agree with you about failure, that failure isn't a bad thing, but giving up is a bad thing. Because if you fail and then while you've failed, you give up, then you stay failed. Whereas if you failed and you continue to make changes, then you get to yourself a place where you're not failing for a while. And then you do something wrong and you fail. And then, oh, damn, I'm going to have to try again. And so you try again. Yeah. So it's the stopping that process, I think. And I think that's the same thing that I think about conflict. One of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you about it is because of my instinct to back away from it. When I was watching that little clip on Dr. Phil and Whoopi, was it? Their faces, the expressions on their faces were just freaking me out. I didn't want to see that. I don't want to see people looking at me angry with angry expressions. I'm just like, no, next movie, find somebody where somebody's smiling. And yet it was in stopping and absorbing the conflict situation in that little clip that gave me the food for thought and that led to this discussion that we're having. Whereas if I just flicked on to something where everybody's happy, I wouldn't have stopped to think. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that being exposed to the conflict made me think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing that you mentioned when you were saying that just now, you mentioned doing things that are hard. And that reminds me of the other little clip we spoke about earlier, which was the Huberman Goggins interview. With them talking about the benefit of doing things you really don't want to do. I found that fascinating.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like you have to say when you gotta say you're training for the Olympics, or you got maybe a whole team that you're training, you're gonna put them through all of these training exercises that are difficult and they don't want to do them. But after they're done doing them and they've gained the strength to at least not fail as hard, they may have acquired some skill and some strength to be able to go and apply those things to their event or their talent or whatever it is that they're doing.
Yes.
And I think I don't know if I said this to you the other day. So if you have a child, say you have two children and they're, one's one and one just got born, and someone tells you, boy, that is going to be so difficult. You're going to have a lot of hard times. And, I did that and my kids are now 10 and 11 or whatever. I wish I was more prepared, because it was difficult. Well, I was thinking, if you make if these kids are going to be your biggest conflict in life, And then they start to realize that you're in this huge conflict because it's so difficult. They're going to feel like this responsibility for your unhappiness, all the things that it's really your gray hairs you're getting, they're going to feel like they're responsible. And so wouldn't it be wise to go and find a steeper hill to climb, something harder, and go and do that and prepare yourself for the hard times that are to come, so that it's not the hardest thing in the world for you. You've chosen something even harder so that it can prepare you and help you build the strength to at least deal with that situation. So I'm just saying, like, if you know that you have hard things coming or in your life that might be there, you should probably go find something harder. And especially if it's children or a mother or a father, you don't want them to feel the emotional pain that may come from them seeing that it's killing you.
Mm-hmm.
Go do something so that you can prepare yourself to manage that. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm saying it as best as I want to, but the old expression, the old people say, when kids are having such a hard time in life, and they say, I used to walk uphill both ways in the snow with no shoes, and I didn't even have breakfast or whatever. They make this huge thing. And
Yes.
maybe the expression has been kind of hijacked over time, because it's come to this point where when you say that, you're saying, well, I struggled too. But I think the more important thing about that expression is that it's important to, on your way to your hardest task, learning, going to school, you should prepare yourself by walking uphill. And then when you're done with that hard task, walk uphill again.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to find the challenge. And that way you don't think school is this horrible thing. Yeah, it's hard, but you're not blaming school for all the things. Blame that hill. Blame that hill. Don't blame school. School is your friend.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's your friend.
Yeah.
And yeah, you should. Yeah. So I think that might be something that's slipping by in the messaging of that uphill both ways in the snow,
Mm-hmm.
coming across there.
I agree with you so much. I read a story once when I was in school. I think it was by Somerset Maugham. It was called The Lotus Eater. And it was a story of a guy who went on holiday to Greece, and he loved it so much. He went home and he sold everything that he had and calculated that he had enough money now to live on Greece in this idyllic way for 10 years. So he reckoned, this is the way to go. I'm going to live like a king and have everything that I want. And then at the end of 10 years, my resources are out. I've lived my life. I've had everything wonderful. There's nothing more that I can experience. So I'm going to kill myself. And so off he went and he did his thing. And then the end of the story was basically he didn't have the guts to kill himself. So he ended up going mad and living in somebody's coal shed. And the moral of the story was that if you live this wonderful, easy life, you run out of willpower and you run out of oomph and guts and determination. And you become somebody who goes mad and lives in a coal shed.
Yes.
So we have this easy life that we live, Okay, not all of us. There's obviously those people who face hideous, hideous hardships and abuses and traumas. But the majority of us in this Western lifestyle have a very easy life. We don't have lions tracking us down or snakes crawling into our mattresses or scorpions.
Mm.
Yeah, some of us have that. Some of
Yeah,
us,
I think especially in the city, I think they just have different names, like corrupt policemen and
yeah.
cops and robbers and mafia, and you know, uh, I think I've veered from the Western successes on purpose, because they aren't successes in my eyes. Every person that has achieved these things ends up running into larger and larger problems, especially with money, with material possessions, with marriages, with relationships. The bounty of the Western civilization and this easy life, I don't buy it. But there are a lot of people that it gives a lot of people the opportunity to advert the situation and go kick back, watch a movie,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, get food delivered to your house. There's all so I agree with you in a huge, huge way, but I don't agree with that. There's not scorpions, there's not snakes, there's not bad
Right.
things, because they're all
True.
and
True.
but for those people that have kind of caught on that there is no escape from those things if you put yourself out there, they just hide. They hide in their little 8x8, sit behind the TV and watch their shows and get food delivered, and then they don't have to deal with the problems
Yeah.
yet, but they will. When they're 50 and 60 and their health has
Yeah.
gone to shit, there's the snake.
There's the
And
snake. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and the you haven't even noticed that he's been biting you for decades already. So um we got to do those hard things that way, especially when our loved ones are involved in some of these, children for sure, because they rely on us
Yes.
to be the adult, to be the person that can withstand this thing, and they will curl up in your arms and they feel safe. If they can't feel safe with you,
Exactly.
then they don't get that relief. They don't
Mm.
get a moment of just like put their eyes to sleep and to go, fall asleep. They
Mm.
can't do that.
Mm.
And they lay awake at night worrying, and they don't get rest, and things get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health is a real thing, and I'm fine now. Listen to me. It's real. It absolutely is real. Oh, man.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny.
It
It's this
is.
other thing. It's
It
that
is.
level of conflict. It's a different sort of conflict, but it is
Mhm.
it is a conflict, just in a very superficial way. There, word meanings. I mean, it's real, but it's not real. But it's real, but like it's not real, but it's real. Yeah, I suppose that's nuance, hey?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that Haberman said, Huberman, I don't know how you say it. Is it Huberman?
Yeah.
One of the things that he said that fascinated me was it's not just doing hard things. Doing hard things builds you up, it builds your body, it builds up a lot of things. But doing things
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to do, that
Mm-hmm.
specifically is the thing. So if you go to run a marathon and you really want to run the marathon, you get a lot of benefits from that, health benefits and physical benefits from that. But you don't get the benefit of building your willpower. But if you go and do something that's really easy for you, but you don't want to do it, like for instance, it's your turn to wash the dishes and you don't want to wash the dishes, but you force yourself to go wash the dishes. The act of forcing yourself to do something that you didn't want to do builds up your willpower. I found that to be a really interesting revelation.
Yes. And that willpower is a chemical in your brain. If you're sending a current through a wire and the wire is small, it will heat up the wire and melt it. But if you build that wire up real big, it has a bigger capacity for the current to go through. So I think we're building that wire when we do things we don't want to do. And you don't just because say I'm gonna, yeah, I'm doing the marathon so I get nice and big and strong, and I'm gonna get this reward and this reward. So it's something that I do want to do. And so you're all of a sudden you realize like, hey, I got to find an extra step here so that I'm also perpetuating this growth of capacity.
Right.
Capacity. Okay. So in every moment, we're always mitigating our outcome versus effort. Okay. We're always doing that all day long. Like say you tie your shoe and it's like I can tie it without bending over, and it really hurts to bend over, so I don't. But if I just this time I'm gonna take the extra effort and really stretch and get myself down there and then tie the shoe the way it's supposed to be done. So we're always kind of like mitigating these efforts that we put in. We do it the easy way, right?
Yes.
Whereas so in every time I go and run that practice marathon, I do it the hard way. I find the way that would be an extra step that I don't have to take, but it really bugs me that I keep making myself do it the hard way, but I'm going to keep finding the hardest way to do it just to piss myself off. And you know what I find, because I do this all the time with almost everything I do, when I'm on the right path in life. Sometimes I get on a bad tangent and I'm always avoiding those hard things. But when I know I'm on the right path, I'll I'll keep searching for that thing I don't want to do. You know what? I don't want to get up in the middle of the night right now and go outside and go potty because it's freezing cold. But I go and I stand up and I go outside. And it's so weird. It's almost like a switch flips on, and this huge capacity for thought, for understanding of my world. All of a sudden, there's this illumination of the current moment, and I feel better living it while I'm doing something I hate. All of a sudden, I'm in love with my life.
I know. What is that? Like when they say that there's no miracles, they didn't try. Because that is a miracle. Like you say, it's a switch. It's an actual, and you can feel that change come over your mood, your self-esteem, your belief in yourself. It's as if you open a doorway to positivity by doing the thing you didn't want to do that you were negative about.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then, that's why I'll go back to this quite often, is you got to kick your own ass or life will do it for you. You got to keep choosing those things that are difficult, that you don't want to do. That way you're in control of what you don't want to do. Because if life takes the wheel on what you don't want to do, it's so much harsher, and it doesn't know how capable you are at life. So it's just going to throw the kitchen sink at you, and you may not be ready for that. So to be in control of what you don't like when your parents tell you, hey, it's time to eat your vegetables and your liver, you might as well listen to your parents. I mean, even though that is outside your control, but they're on your side. They're your advocate. So you should allow your friend to beat you up and prepare you for life, because that's the I don't know. So I might be jumping off into a tangent now, but yeah, I mean, it's just so incredible that moment when you finally give in and you go, okay, I don't want to do this, but you do it, and then all of a sudden you start to feel good about yourself, and the energy comes in, and you're proud of yourself. You're like, man, I don't like this, but here I am, and it had to be done, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I have so many of those things, Bob. Like, it bugs me that I'm not the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, but I also don't, because there's so many things in my life. My life's falling apart. I'm a wreck. I got so many things, especially in my business life and my financial life, and there's so many things that I don't have together. and there's so many things that I need to do. I don't want to do. They're difficult, and I'm not doing them. So I'm not like this saint or this, guru of this concept. Certainly not. But I'm aware. I'm aware that I'm failing. I'm aware that in order to succeed, I'm going to have to do those things. There's nobody I can call, and then I'm going to be successful all of a sudden. If I let someone do it for me, I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to have the strength to do the thing that comes along that nobody's going to be there for me for. So I'm finding, importance in these things that I'm putting off and being lazy about. And I'm like, I better write that into my calendar. And if I don't do it by this date, I'm going to, there's this funny thing that people use for getting away from bad habits. They put a rubber band on their wrist. And every time they do that bad habit, they'll flick that rubber band. And so that right there, because they're not doing the thing that's hard and not doing the bad habit or doing the good habit, they reach down and they, gosh darn it, I don't want to do this either, but at least I can do this right now. And you snap that thing and you burn it. And eventually you start doing the thing because it's more pleasant than snapping your wrist. So life is kind of like that. So I'm saying, you kick your own ass or life will do it for you. Life is much harsher. It's like that rubber band. It really smarts. And so eventually you go, well, fuck, I'd rather do the hard thing that I don't want to do than get smacked by the rubber band.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I
totally get that. Yes. So the point that you make about not having your life all together, my perspective of that is that I don't know anybody who has their life together. So if I was going to go and find a guru who had their life together, I would never find anybody because there is nobody. And somebody said to me once, when you want advice, check out who that person is that's giving you the advice. Because if there's a person who's giving you this really long speech on how to deal with your finances and they're really poor, don't listen to their advice because they're taking their own advice. So don't do it. If you want advice on how to be really wealthy, go find somebody really wealthy to give you that advice, But, it also works for sports people. If you want advice on physical fitness and health, don't go and find the guy who's sitting on the sofa drinking Coke, because he's very unlikely to give you the advice that's going to lead to success. So
I think that's partially.
That's partially true.
That's partially.
Well, you could get somebody who's brilliant at giving advice and not taking it. Take my advice. I'm not using it.
I'm just saying they might have a point that maybe not even the guru understands because they've failed. And so the guy on the couch that's given up, he might still have some wisdom for you. If you're that young chap that's ready to go and take on the world, he might have something worth listening to. But he's not your guru that you should come back to every day.
That's right.
You should probably broaden your horizons.
Probably. Yes, I'm not saying that people's advice isn't worth it. And yes, you can definitely pick up gems from all sorts of unlikely people. But mostly what I think I'm trying to say is that people are good at some things and not so good at other things. So it's worth relying on the advice in the areas that they're good at those things. Like a rich person could probably give you good advice on how to get rich, and a physically fit person could probably give you very good advice on how to get physically fit. So it would just be sensible to look for those sort of people. But that rich person who's giving you advice on how to be rich, he might have 6 broken relationships. So don't listen to any of his advice about relationships. It's discernment. It's people are good at some things and not good at other things. So where do you find the perfect person to listen to?
I know the answer.
Yes, tell me. Yourself.
Not me, but if I'm asking, it's me that has the answer.
Right.
And like, so if you are looking for somebody, it's you. There's this amazing video I saw. This guy's cleaning the glass screen on his stove.
Yep.
And it's got soot all over it. And there's nothing. I mean, he's tried all the products that claim to clean soot away, and he's sitting there scrubbing, and none of them work. And he makes a statement about the answer or the solution being inside the problem or part of the problem.
Wow.
Just look further into the problem, and you will find the solution. And so he reaches inside the stove and dips his wet rag that's got water on it in the ash and just wipes the soot away like it's nothing.
Wow.
So he made another metaphoric correlation, but he really reiterated we need to look further into the problems for the solutions and stop looking outside the problem for the solution. The solution is inside the problem.
That's so interesting, because that again is conflict. Like, my idea of conflict is separation, 2 sides, banging in the middle. Dr. Phil on one side and Whoopi on the other side, both looking at each other with these fierce faces, absolutely determined that the other one doesn't know anything at all. And yet, like, you're saying this, I mean, you're talking about the middle. You're talking about entering into the problem where it is. And I think that's, again, I said, like, I back away from conflict. Enter into the conflict, enter into the situation. And then also you have to search, because very often the easy answer isn't the answer. You need to find the hard answer. The answer you don't want
to know.
Yes. So it is inside you. It is inside you. Your answer is inside you, but you might not want to look at it.
Right. I think we all have access to understanding what I'm saying, but it's so hard to like, you almost have to force yourself to accept the truth and to understand that you're insufficient, you lack, you're not as good as you thought you were. And these are things that if you come to terms with, then you can start seeing life for what it is.
Okay. Right. So good. Thank you so much for an absolutely amazing talk. That was so interesting, Rush. Thank you so much.
Well, of course, bobdub. I always look forward to chats with, like your intro there to our tape video. We've spent a good many years and a very good many, texting back and forth and getting to know each other. And so we've built a way to communicate with each other that we can tackle these issues and have these deep conversations. And I've really come to a place where I think we're doing such a good job that we've come to a place that it's worth sharing. And we're touching on issues that are important.
Yes.
And a lot of people are going through them. And I hope we can both continue being responsible consumers of our world so that we can keep growing and and find a place where we can maybe help somebody,
Yeah,
help ourselves,
I love that.
help somebody help themselves.
Yes, yes. All the healers healing each other.
Yeah.
It'll be good. So the thing that I'm taking away from today, Rush, is find a steeper hill. Oh, hello, Elo.
Find a steeper hill. That's a good one.
That's
Yeah.
a brilliant one. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we'll do this again next week.
Cool. Yeah.
Have a good evening, Rush. I'll speak to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Rush. Bobbing, 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 bobbing along. Bobbing, bobbing, bobbing along, bobbing along.